What would you do if a foreign billionaire who is not an American citizen went on national television and suggested the United States should limit the First Amendment to protect it? Because that's not a hypothetical. That is actually what just happened. On CNBC, Israeli cybersecurity billionaire Shlomo Kramer openly floated the idea of controlling social media, ranking Americans by authenticity, and restricting speech before it's too late. And the moment that those words hit the internet, pretty much everything detonated. Why? Because Americans, they know a scam when they hear one. You don't save free speech by shrinking it. You don't protect liberty by handing the government a dial to turn up voices or turn voices down. And you sure as hell don't let a foreign tech billionaire lecture Americans on rewriting the First Amendment. That is when JD Vance just stepped in, and this is the key right here. JD Vance did not hedge. He didn't soften it. He drew a hard line and said what millions of Americans were already thinking. If you're afraid of free speech, you're not fit to lead. Here is why this moment matters right now. It is January 2026. President Trump's back in the White House under the Trump administration. The stakes are real. The pressure is real, and the push to manage speech, it didn't disappear. It got bolder. So tonight, we're going to go ahead and break down why this crossed the line, why it blew up so fast, and why JD Vance finally said enough is enough. Hit the like button and subscribe. Folks, let's be very precise about what set this off because precision matters. On CNBC, Shlomo Kramer publicly suggested that the United States should limit the First Amendment in order to protect free speech. It almost sounds like an oxymoron. Not some think tank paper, not in a private meeting, on national television. This is when JD Vance reached his limit because this wasn't abstract. This wasn't academic. This was a foreign, non-citizen billionaire floating a framework where American speech would be managed, ranked, and potentially restricted by systems influenced by government power. Now, this didn't land quietly because it couldn't. Americans instantly understood what was being implied here, that a foundational liberty could be treated like a software feature, toggled, optimized, or throttled. How about even shadow banned? That's not reform, that is rupture. And the speed of the backlash pretty much told you everything. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a line being tested. Now, listen carefully to the language that Shlomo Kramer used because this is where the danger lives. He didn't say ban speech. He said limit it to protect it. He didn't say censorship. He said authenticity ratings. He didn't say government control. He said platforms should act before it's too late. Now that vagueness is the telltale sign right there. I mean, when someone can't even clearly define the problem but insists on urgent action, you're not hearing policy. You're hearing panic dressed up as prudence. Too late for who? Too late for what? Americans noticed immediately that none of that was explained. Now, the proposal, it implied a system where speech is evaluated, scored, and managed. So who defines authentic? Who audits the auditors? And once speech is ranked, who gets suppressed first? The powerful or the inconvenient? This is why people recoiled, not because of exaggeration, but because the logic collapses into control. And Americans have already seen that movie before. Now, this is where the story stops being theoretical and it starts becoming dangerous. Shlomo Kramer is not a random commentator with a microphone. He is a heavyweight in global cybersecurity. He's founded companies, built systems, and operated in environments where data control, surveillance, and digital enforcement are not abstract ideas, they're daily operations. So this is why his words landed so differently. When someone with no technical leverage floats a bad idea, people just roll their eyes and they keep on moving with their day. But when someone with deep experience in cybersecurity or cyber infrastructure says the same thing, people start asking harder questions because capability changes intent. And let's be honest, guys, cybersecurity doesn't live in a vacuum. It intersects with governments, defense agencies, intelligence, and yes, parts of the United States federal government. That doesn't mean there's a conspiracy. It means that there is proximity. So when Kramer talks about ranking speech and controlling platforms, Americans are not imagining sci-fi futures. They're recognizing that the tools already exist to do that. And this is exactly why the reaction was so sharp. This wasn't just talk. This sounded like a test balloon. Now, this is very important because what we're talking about tonight, this is not just about speech or power. This is about what happens when systems you thought had your back quietly don't. So a woman reached out to me recently and she said something that really stuck with me. She told me that her emergency fund vanished after 2 medical visits. Her Medicare plan technically covered the appointment, but it didn't cover the procedures. There was no warning, no heads up, just bills. And she said, I felt broke again. That's the part that nobody prepares you for. It's not the big crisis, it's the fine print. And that's why I partner with Chapter. Chapter helps make sure that your Medicare coverage actually works the way you think it does, so one bad month doesn't undo years of careful savings. Now, this is not about selling anything. This is about protecting yourself from quiet damage. Now, most people, they're already dialing the phone number at the bottom of your screen right there, 909-563-8279, or they're clicking the link in the description down below to go to askchapter.org/Ron to have their coverage reviewed for free before the surprise hits. All right, so let's get back to the story, because what comes next, this is where it gets personal. So let's go ahead and slow this down. Let's make it real. An authenticity rating. This system sounds harmless until you actually picture it. Every post, every comment, every opinion, it gets scored. Not by your peers, not by open debate, but by opaque standards that are decided somewhere above your head. So who gets to define what's authentic? A committee? An algorithm, a government partner, and once that score exists, then what happens next? Reduced reach, shadow bans, account freezes, permanent silence. This is not free speech with guardrails. This is bureaucratic censorship wearing a lab coat. So the most chilling part is not even the suppression, it's the uncertainty. People don't need to be banned in order to be controlled. They just need to wonder whether speaking will cost them visibility, opportunity, or access. And this is exactly how self-censorship spreads. And this is why Americans reacted so viscerally. Because once speech is ranked, freedoms become conditional. And conditional freedom is not freedom at all. It's permission. And permission can always be revoked. So the backlash didn't slowly build. It detonated. Within hours of Shlomo Kramer's comments airing on CNBC, Americans across the political spectrum, they were reacting in real time. Not because influencers told them to do so, but because free speech hits a nerve deeper than policy disputes or even party lines. Now, this wasn't about left versus right. This was about something far more primal. The fear that once speech becomes managed, everything else follows. Americans have watched other countries walk this road before. First, it's misinformation, then it's safety, then it's authenticity, and all of a sudden, dissent becomes suspicious by default. This is why the response felt so emotional, even furious. I mean, people weren't arguing semantics. They were defending instinctively. The speed mattered. When outrage forms this fast, this is not manufactured. It's recognition. Recognition that something essential was being threatened here. Now, the internet, it didn't need dates to decide. The internet needed minutes. And this is where JD Vance steps in. And also, this is why his response mattered so much. So Vance didn't posture. He didn't hedge. He didn't wrap his words in some consultant-approved language. He did something very rare in modern politics. He closed the argument. Vance made it clear that leaders who fear speech, especially speech they disagree with, they're unfit to lead. Now, that statement, it wasn't accidental. It was a direct rejection of the entire premise behind Kramer's proposal. Because once you accept that speech must be managed, I mean, you already conceded the most important ground. So what gave this response weight was the timing and the position. This wasn't a senator tweeting into the void. This was the sitting vice president of the United States of America speaking directly during a moment when Americans were already on edge about speech control. And so this is why this became the emotional spine of the story. Vance, he just said what millions were already thinking, and he said it without apology. So here's the deeper truth that JD Vance was pointing at. And I will say it is a little uncomfortable for the people in power. When leaders start talking about limiting speech, it's almost never because speech is dangerous. It's because speech is working. It's because voters are talking, questioning, organizing, and they're refusing to be managed. That's the tell sign, guys. Fear of speech is fear of losing control. If the ideas were strong, they wouldn't need protection. If the policies were sound, they wouldn't need insulation from criticism. The push to manage speech only shows up when persuasion fails. That's why JD Vance's response cut so cleanly through the noise. He wasn't just defending the First Amendment, he was exposing the motive behind attacking it. Censorship is not confidence, it's panic. And Americans, they recognize panic when they see it, especially when it's disguised as concern for public safety or social stability. This is why this argument collapsed the moment that it hit daylight. Now, what really makes this moment eerie is how familiar it is. Now, long before social media, algorithms, or even cybersecurity firms, America's founders warned about this exact pattern. George Washington, he warned that foreign influence was among the greatest threats to the republic. John Adams, he wrote openly about recurring dangers that are tied to outside pressure. And James Madison, he cautioned that tyranny would arrive disguised as protection. That's not a coincidence. This is pattern recognition. So when Shlomo Kramer talks about limiting speech before it's too late, that fits the warning perfectly. The justification is always urgency, the promise is always safety, and the cost is always liberty. This is not nostalgia, this is continuity. The threats change costumes, but the logic never changes. And context matters, and timing matters even more. This conversation, it's happening in January 2026. With President Donald J. Trump back in the White House under the Trump administration, that pretty much changes the entire equation, because unlike prior administrations that flirted with content moderation partnerships and speech management schemes, this administration has taken the complete opposite posture. Speech protection, not speech control. So this doesn't mean the threat disappears. It just means that the line of defense is clearer. When JD Vance speaks now, he's not speaking into a hostile bureaucracy. He's reinforcing a governing philosophy, one that treats the First Amendment as a hard boundary, not a negotiable setting. That's why this moment feels sharper. Americans are not reacting to a bad idea. They're measuring it against an administration that has promised not to let that idea advance. Relief enters, but only briefly, because vigilance is the price of liberty. Now let's talk about the accelerant, okay? CNBC didn't invent Shlomo Kramer's argument, but they did normalize it. By presenting a radical proposal in a calm, business-like setting, the network stripped away the alarm bells that normally should have been ringing. This is how dangerous ideas travel, not through shouting, but through casual framing. When a host doesn't challenge the premise, the audience is left to process it as reasonable, or at least debatable. And Americans noticed that absence immediately. That's why the backlash wasn't just against Kramer, it was against the platform. People immediately understood instinctively that when elite media treats speech restriction as a policy option instead of a red line, the Overton window shifts real fast. CNBC didn't cause the outrage, but they gave it oxygen. And once the public connected these dots, the story didn't just spread, it exploded. So what Shlomo Kramer and his defenders didn't anticipate was the instinctive recoil. This wasn't a debate that softened public opinion, it hardened it. The moment Americans heard a polished argument for limiting the First Amendment, the reaction wasn't confusion, it was clarity. This is the Streisand effect in real time. By saying the quiet part out loud, Kramer forced people to confront a question they hadn't wanted to ask. If this can be proposed publicly, what's being discussed privately? Now that's the real question right there. Now that realization, it flipped the script. Instead of easing concerns about misinformation, the proposal amplified the distrust of elites, of platforms, and of the media ecosystem that normalized the pitch on CNBC. Americans didn't need persuasion to reject it. They recognized the pattern. And once that recognition set in, the plan collapsed under its own weight. The backlash wasn't coordinated, it was organic. And this is why it was unstoppable. This is where it ends, cleanly and finally. The First Amendment isn't a feature to be updated or some setting to be optimized. This is a boundary. Cross it and you don't get a safer society, you get a quieter one. And quiet is not peace, it's compliance. This is why JD Vance had enough. His response wasn't about one billionaire or one interview. It was about drawing a line that doesn't move, especially in January 2026, with President Donald J. Trump leading the Trump administration and a very clear mandate to protect speech, not to manage it. Free speech is not negotiable, not partially, not temporarily, not until things calm down. It is all or nothing. And the moment that Americans sensed that line was being tested, they reacted, they responded exactly as the founders expected them to. That's the takeaway, folks. That's why this blew up. And this is why JD Vance, he said what was needed to be said.